Hello. In this video, we will go over the solution to challenge 9 in the Knight's Realm game, and that was about using a health system instead of just immediately losing when you get hit by an enemy. So the first thing is I will make a variable to keep track of the player's health. So I'll say let HP equals 3. Now Kaboom does have a health system kind of built into it, but we'll look at how we can recreate this ourselves using just variables like we've seen before. All right, so now I do have a variable. Maybe let's take a look at it on the screen, just like we're showing the score. So I'll do something similar to score label. So say const HP label equals add brackets inside of the parentheses there. Add square brackets so I can add all the components for this HP label. So call the text function with quotes HP colon space plus HP. That way it shows whatever that happens to be. All right, comma, so I can do the pause function there. And I think I'll put it halfway on the screen. So I'll do width parens divided by 2 for the X component, and then comma 5 for the Y component. So it's the same as the score label there. And just like the score label, I'll add in the size attribute. So in that text function there, the first parameter is what do I see? What is the text? Then the second parameter are those extra options. So comma braces, so I can add some properties for these options. So size is 10. Size is the key, colon 10 for the value in that object right there. Okay, so that should make it show up at least, and I'll see HP is 3, so it's using whatever that variable happens to be. So then, right now when I have player.collides with enemy, I just go straight to the lose scene. So I don't want to do that anymore. What I want to do is make HP reduce. So I will, I'm in the moment when the player has collided with the enemy, so HP minus minus, which reduces it by 1, which is the same thing as saying HP minus equals 1. And it's the same thing as saying HP equals HP minus 1. And then update that score label there, or the health label. So take HP label dot text and set that equal to quotes HP colon space plus HP. So that should update it then whenever we've collided with the enemy. All right, so it is working. HP is certainly going down, but we notice something very interesting, that it keeps going down. It keeps going negative and negative and negative. That's because those things are still touched. Um, so we want to think of a way to kind of halt that a little bit. When the enemy hurts the player, it shouldn't be able to just immediately hurt the player after that. And this game is hopefully running at 60 frames per second, so it could reduce its HP by 60 every second. And we'll see when the Roomba is coming back now that it's just going to keep taking its HP off. But that really shouldn't be the way that it works. So when should the HP of the player be reduced? I mean, first when the player collides with the enemy, so I want to still be in here. But sometimes I want the HP to reduce and sometimes I don't. So we'll use an if statement to control whether that happens or not. But then what makes that if statement happen or not? I think we need some kind of variable to say whether the enemy is allowed to hurt the player or not. So I'm going to scroll back up to where we make Roomba, or where we define all of the properties for Roomba. And just like we have these velocity and speed properties, let's give it another property that's called can hurt. I'll do the key and value pairs there. So can hurt colon, and then I'll say true. So immediately, the enemy is able to hurt the player. Now we want to be, this is okay right here. We would want to think a little more carefully though, because I've only added this to a Roomba. I don't have any other enemies, so it's okay, but I'm not necessarily promising that enemies have this property. just that the Roombas do. So if we're thinking forward a little bit, we want to tie that into other enemies that you have. All right, so when a Roomba is created, it's allowed to hurt the player. But then when the Roomba collides with the player, then we want to set that property to false. All right, it started to collide, so it's going to do its thing. But then it needs to wait a little while. It's not allowed to hurt it until a little bit later. So we'd want to do like can hurt equals false. All right, so you've collided. Okay, you're going to maybe do your thing. So we'll go there. Now I want to step back a little bit. All right, to think back to this idea, should the player even get hurt in the first place? So that's only if this can hurt property, I'll type it out, if it is true. Now I don't have to actually type the rest of that because it's either true or false. But only if can hurt is true, then that's when, so I'm going to open up my curly braces before the HP and the HP label, and then close it after that stuff. So we can see here that these are the two statements that are controlled by whether can hurt is true or not. So if can hurt is true, if it's allowed to, then it will do these things. And if not, then it just does nothing. There's nothing for it to do. Now, I said can hurt. That's as if it was this variable. I didn't make that with const or with let, so I don't actually have a variable called can hurt. So we got to figure out how do I actually access that. But we're going to get an error like this that says can hurt is not defined. Right, well, can hurt actually is a small piece of Roomba, so I need to get that Roomba object. So I can do that here in the parameters here. So anytime you're looking for the variables, they pretty much come from three places, either const or let. You look through the code and try to find those, or it's a parameter. So in this case, I do want a parameter to capture the enemy that is hurting me right now, or that is colliding with me. So I'll just call it E for whatever the enemy happens to be. So because that's the actual variable that I have. So E dot can hurt. That actually lets me access this. Now we're still going to get the same results so far. We haven't actually changed the logic in any way because this property is still true. We never changed it. With variables and properties, you want to think through three different steps of create, read, and update with those. So we definitely created the property can hurt. We are reading the property. We care whether it's true or false, but we never updated it. We never changed it, so it's still true. So this is another thing that would happen when I start to hurt something. It would be logical to maybe put it at the end, although it does not make a difference. All right, so if can hurt is true, we'll then reduce the HP, update the HP label, and then say E dot can hurt equals false. Then change it, that way it turns around and that's not a true statement anymore. It can hurt is false. So now the enemy can only hurt the player for that one moment. Now it would kind of make sense for the Roomba to be able to hurt again. So maybe there's a situation where we would want to turn that back on to true. And I think it's time related. So maybe make it wait a half a second or wait a second or something like that before it can hurt again. And how would we make it do that? Well, luckily Kaboom does have a nice function called wait that will take care of this time waiting event that we need, which isn't too easy to do without the function that we have here. So we're going to call it there, where it got hurt, and then we did change can hurt to false. Well, I'm also going to call the wait function, make it wait, let's say 2 seconds, just to make it really obvious, comma, and then the function for what happens 2 seconds later. So an arrow function. That what's supposed to happen 2 seconds later? Well, that e.canHurt is true once again. That this should happen 2 seconds after the initial damaging. All right, so I'm standing there, I can't get hurt, but I hit it again. I'm still pushing against it. All right, yep, so now we got that happening. Now we want to figure out the actual you lose situation. All right, when should we go to the lose scene? Well, it's possibly when you collide with the enemy, if the enemy is allowed to hurt you. And I'd say maybe one of the first things we would decide is, before we even pay attention to HP, what if I don't have any HP left? So if HP is less than, well, what if we just, I think we can rely on that. What if HP is 0? I have no HP left and then I get hurt. Then use the go function to go to the lose scene. All right, and I just omitted the curly braces because it's only one line. All right, so if I did get hurt again and my HP was 0, then that's when I should go to the lose scene. All right, so 1, 2, do it fast enough. Okay, got there. Just wait for the Roomba to come back. So now when the Roomba hits me again, my HP is 0. If I get hurt one more time, then that's going to send me to the lose scene. Now you could change that number if you'd rather have it be when HP was 1, but I got hurt again, then I lose. You could change this line to say if HP equals 1 then. But once the Roomba hits me one more time, that should send me to the lose scene.